Steminism, the Equity in STEM podcast, sponsored by the Royal Society of Chemistry, where we hold conversations about race representation in STEM with the greatest minds in industry and academia. Hello and welcome to Steminism, the Equity in STEM podcast, where we have conversations around race representation and a lack thereof, while leveling the playing field in science,
technology,
engineering,
and mathematics.
So, today we have the pleasure of being joined by one of the UK's rising stars in STEM.
Drum roll, please.
In fact, the Financial Times recognized her as being one of the top 100 most influential Black and minority ethnic leaders in diversity in tech, which is actually quite an achievement given her background as a chemical engineer, followed by being a healthcare and business consultant. But in that respect, she was also recognized as being one of the top 50 women in engineering. In 2022, she was awarded an honorary doctorate from her alma mater, which is really a testament to her hard work and dedication in the sphere of diversity and inclusion in STEM. A campaigner, an activist, and a business owner of an inspiring organization who are really seeking to change the narrative and provide solutions to improving access and also equity in STEM. So, can you give it up for Dr. Kayisha Payne?
Ooh, the crowd goes wild.
Thank you. Thanks.
No problem.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Thank you for coming to see us today. And I was just reflecting that we didn't even know who each other were about a couple of months ago. Now here we are today, shooting a podcast. So yeah, great testament to the power of networking. And we thank you for coming down to see us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Our pleasure. So do you want to get straight into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Wicked. I always like to start at the beginning because I feel like having an understanding of people's background really gives you a sense of an understanding of their purpose and their journey. So I think you have a Caribbean background, right?
I'm half Nigerian, half Jamaican.
Oh, wicked.
And a lot of people get miss out the Nigerian. Because they say I don't particularly look Nigerian and my first name isn't a Nigerian sounding name, but my middle name is Ibijoke.
Oh, we should have added that. I love that.
So yeah, my dad's Nigerian and my mum's Jamaican.
Amazing.
But I would say my Caribbean side has had much more of an influence in my upbringing and my life and things like that.
That's a powerful mix there. Caribbean and Nigerian, two very fiery and passionate cultures there. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess you grew up in the UK though, so
yeah.
I think doing research, I think you grew up in South London.
I did, yeah.
Can you maybe speak to the family dynamics that you grew up around? Any brothers and sisters, and just generally what was it like growing up in your household?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest, and I think that always comes with its own dynamic. So I have two older brothers, two older sisters. As I said, my mum's Jamaican, my dad's Nigerian. But when my dad was actually born in Nigeria and came over when he was really young, and he grew up in Brixton, so he had a very big Caribbean influence in his life. So that was pretty much the predominant culture in my household growing up. We would have rice and peas and chicken every single Sunday. And you'd be playing reggae every single Sunday. So there was a much more of a Jamaican and Caribbean, essence in my household. But as I said, two older brothers, two older sisters, very protective. I'm very much the little sister. Even now, as I'm going into my 30s, my brothers and sisters still see me as baby Kai and not necessarily their younger sister, which I think every last child goes through this. I don't know if you guys are. Do you have, you're the
blessing
baby.
And a curse. Blessing and a curse.
Exactly. So you know exactly how that is. But I think that's always part of it, is that you've seen what your parents and your older siblings have achieved, and then there's always some sort of benchmark that you either need to kind of achieve the same things or maybe do a little bit better. So That was kind of how I grew up.
Yeah, I'm the firstborn child, so I definitely can't relate to either of you and your lastborn benefits, as it were.
Out of how many?
Three.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you had all the pressure, though.
Yeah. Hopefully they learned from all my mistakes, but that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
You touch a bit on the family dynamics and your mom and dad and the family importance. Can you speak maybe to any fundamental life lessons that you learned early on when you were growing up that have kind of stayed with you now?
Oh, I would say the biggest one is hard work pays off. And a lot of times people say it's not how hard you work, but who you know and all of this stuff. But I've seen my parents be like real grafters, real grafters. My dad's always been there, always provided for us, always put food on the table. But he's in a completely different industry. He's been a property developer all his life. So that's what I've seen growing up. And then same with my mum. She's pretty much always made herself busy. First, she was doing interior designing, and then she opened up her own cleaning business. And then I guess she got a little bit of inspiration from my dad. So then she kind of went into the property development landscape as well. But they've always instilled in me that you should always remain humble, no matter whereabouts you are in life, because there's always going to be people in different situations and you shouldn't be a respecter of persons. So maintain your humility, work hard, but also don't take no for an answer. Because sometimes it's so easy to get discouraged. But if you truly believe in something, then you should go ahead and try and achieve it as much as you can.
Powerful. Yeah. Anything to say about that?
I can definitely relate to that, the theme of hard work, and especially when we've seen our parents kind of come from one place to move to a completely different new environment and overcome all those challenges. And I think that generation were definitely really hardworking, regardless of the situation, regardless of the circumstances. And I think you can definitely see it in our generation coming through and trying to apply that and maybe add a bit of a modern dynamic to it going forward as well.
Yeah. It's my dad used to say, if you can't be good, be excellent. So there was no option for
even
anything
just
else.
Trying to chug along.
Absolutely, yeah. So what about education? Because this is something that I feel like Black people in particular, depending on the kind of background they grew up in, I've noticed it a lot with parents who emigrated to this country. They really have a high value. They put a high value on education.
Yeah.
Can you maybe talk to the value of education in your family?
Yeah, I would say that was definitely instilled from young. So by the time I came along, my parents were in a position to put me through private school. So out of all of my siblings, I was the only one that went from pretty much nursery right up until year 11. So I did the whole stint, different forms of private schools and in different areas, but because they had the means to. If they had the means when my siblings were younger, they would have definitely done the same thing. But they've always said your education is something that no one can take away from you. So yeah, I went to private school. I can't say it was the easiest of experiences, because during my younger years, I went to one in South London, which was very, very multicultural. But then I moved to another one in year 9 when we moved out to the Kent area. And there was I think there was just 4 Black girls in my year.
Yeah.
So I've moved from South London to the suburbs, and yeah, it was quite tough. It was quite tough because I remember quite a few girls used to say, "Oh, she's so ghetto. Her parents must be drug dealers."
Imagine
all of that stuff. So then you feel very left out. I remember the second day I was crying in the toilet to one of my friends, Rhoda at the time, and I was just like, "This is a completely different environment. Completely different environment." But I think at the same time, having to experience that from young has actually been really helpful in how I enter the workspace. And I say this, me and my boyfriend talk about this all the time because he's Black he went to a private school as well. And back then, I think it's a lot more multicultural now. Like when I see, when like my school invites me back, there's a lot more black and brown kids, But he went through the same thing, and being the only like one of the few black boys in his year, and having to operate and navigate in a white space. And kids can be so like relentless and horrible.
Kids are tough. Kids are tough. They just tell you like it is.
Exactly.
Tell you like it is.
Exactly. So having to deal with that was kind of like additional training that you don't realize that you're going through. But then when you enter the working world and you are one of the few people, it's not as uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Really builds your resilience, I think, going through that kind of, as long as you have the means to be able to take it. Okay, there's always going to be some tears in when it gets tough. But I also went to a private school. I was much younger than you. I wasn't in year 9. I was like age 8 or 9. But again, I think it's really helped to sort of navigate white-dominated spaces, which is unfortunately the case in science and engineering. They tend to be super white-dominated spaces. How did it end up like in that school? Did you manage to make some connections in the end, or was it just okay?
Yeah,
so it
I did.
Yeah.
And they were mainly all the black girls.
Yeah,
the few black girls that were there.
Yeah.
The few black girls that were there, I made the connections with them. But then I didn't stay there long, so it was just year 9, 10, 11, and then I went to a grammar school for my 6th form.
Do you remember it at the time though? Because like, do you like really distinctly remember being one of the few black people? Because I think it can leave a mark on you.
Yeah, massively. Like I can vividly remember me crying in the toilet and saying to Rhoda, "There's no black people around." And that's I think that will probably stay with me for a long time. But I think quite a lot of those experiences can be quite prominent, where it's hard to forget.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those situations where when you're young and you're in it, it feels quite daunting and uncomfortable. Exactly, yeah. But when you, as you said, when you look back on your career, it's almost like training to some extent. And as you grow and you get older, maybe we'll just talk a bit about your passion and your pursuit of STEM and science and chemistry. So I believe originally you were interested in forensic science, which is kind of aligned to Ali and what he does. And then you ended up in pharmaceutical process development, which is quite similar to what I do. So can you talk us through
that?
Exactly, that's it. Yeah, sometimes you got to do that to figure out where your passion is. Was that something that started when you were really young, or when you got to university? Can you talk to us about that?
So I'd say the interest in forensic science came because I loved chemistry. Chemistry, I would say, is still my favourite subject. But then I also had a bit of an unhealthy obsession with crime shows.
Yeah.
And like the first
Which
48.
Which
the first 48, I used to watch that all the time. Like, but real life stuff, not CSI.
Yeah.
The real life stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
I think my mum started to get a bit worried with the amount of crime shows that I was watching. But that's really where it stemmed from. You know, watching these TV shows, which are pretty, gruesome and unfortunate for a lot of people. And then my passion for chemistry. So from, I guess year 9, year 10, I knew that I wanted to do something in that space. And then by the time I got to 6th form, we had to do some sort of work experience. So my cousin, she worked for the Met Police. I can't remember which station it was, but she got me like a little bit of a work experience. I think it was like 2 or 3 days in the forensic science department at this police station. So I'd gone, and it just wasn't what I expected. Like, it just wasn't what I was expecting. I thought that I would be able to go out into these crime scenes, pick up the evidence, then go back to the lab, test it myself, and,
hands-on,
really hands-on.
You get a rude awakening.
Complete rude awakening, because they was like, right, we have the equivalent of like police officers that work in the forensic science department. They'll go to these crime scenes, pick up the evidence, bag it or whatever, send it to some lab, however many miles away in some remote place that no one wants to live in. And then you have these scientists that will just test all day.
Every day,
all day, every
Very
day.
routine.
And they don't have any of the information of like where this evidence has come from, what like the whole story is. And I was just like, leave me out, because I don't think I want to do this. And then from the police station side, they was like, yes, you're going to have to do, the way they do it is shifts. So sometimes you'll have to do night shifts. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that either. So I kind of moved away from the forensic science route. But I still wanted to do something in chemistry. So I spoke to my careers advisor, and I think I had a good one, because I said, I want to do chemistry. I don't particularly want to be a chemistry teacher or a chemist, which now that I'm like in industry now, I know that those degrees don't just limit you to those two options. But my careers advisor was like, why didn't you think about chemical engineering then? Because it applies loads of different things. And I still had an interest in physics and some other stuff. So when I went to have a look at some open days in some unis, I thought, okay, this actually seems like something that I want to go down. But when you're 17 looking for courses, like 5 years seems like a really long time, because I was going to do the integrated masters with a placement. So that would have been 5 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I really going to stick this out for 5 years? But for me, it was the best option, because when I went to these open days, they said by the time you finish your 5 years, you can literally go into any sort of industry, whether it's oil and gas, cosmetics, energy. Then they even said if you want to go into the commercial side, there are some law firms that specifically look for chemical engineers. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. Anything can happen in 5 years. Like I might change my mind. So I decided to go with chemical engineering. And then when I was studying, I said I either wanted to be in cosmetics or oil and gas. I didn't even think of the pharma industry at that point. And then in my third year, which was my placement year, I was a process engineer at a cosmetic manufacturing company called Coty, and that was such an amazing year. Like I have a lot of respect for the people. Well, two of the managers. I had 3 managers. Two of the managers that I had to report to. I have massive amounts of respect for them, because they made me see what potential I had from like a professional and personal side of things. And even though I was an intern / actual process engineer, because the person that I was shadowing went on maternity leave, so I effectively had to step into her shoes. They were like, look, if you want to do a course for managers, go and do it. If you want to do a course for directors, go and do it. Because if that's your aspiration 2-3 years from now, why not start to acquire the skills? And I was really lucky to have that, because some of the other interns, their managers were like, well, you're not in that position, and that means you're going to be away from what I need you to do for a day or two. So that was a really, really great experience. And I keep in touch with them even now, and we're 9 years on. So I've still like kept those relationships.
Power of network.
Yeah.
Which we'll come to.
Exactly. But what really kind of triggered me to think about the pharma industry was in my final year. So my final year of my bachelor's, we had a new lecturer that came from Loughborough, and in your final year, you have to do like a big research project. So everything that you've learned in the 2-3 years before goes into this research project. And this lady came from Loughborough, and her specialism was biochemical engineering and biotechnology. And I happened to be put in her group, where I had to design a cation exchange chromatography column. So, but I was fuming, because I was like, we've not had one pharma module all this time, and now this woman comes along. my whole degree could like completely go to waste because I have no knowledge. Everyone else that's done like design distillation columns and stuff that we've done before, they have all of this knowledge that they can now go get a first. And I'm here, you're just trying to mess up my degree.
Crippled you. Yeah, fair enough.
Extra challenges.
I was fuming. I was like, no, this is not the way to go. But I had no choice anyway. I really had no choice. But once I got into it, I was so fascinated by pharma and particularly the biologic side. So we had to design the process to make a monoclonal antibody.
Wow.
So
Can you break that down for us? For just, what is that for those
a monoclonal antibody.
Yeah.
So, oh gosh, now you're really...
The opinion was fine. I was like, we're going to get technical today.
The way I break it down is that there's like two types of drug development processes. One where you're going to make tablets, or one where you're going to go down a route where it's a lot more complex and you're making liquids. So the tableting process, when you're making your like ibuprofen and paracetamol and all of that stuff, it's a whole different manufacturing process, different requirements, different expectations from the regulators. But when you're doing things like monoclonal antibodies, peptides, which can be used for cancer drugs and everything else, that's likely to be a liquid that goes into a syringe or vial. Okay. The steps are completely different. So the chromatography column was basically a purification step where you've cultivated the cells, because monoclonal antibodies are like live agents. So you have to go through quite a few processes to clean the liquid of the drug. So you're left basically with this active ingredient, which will be targeting whatever disease. So the step that I had to design, which was a chromatography column, used ion exchange technology to purify the drug to a certain degree before it moved on to the next step.
I mean, that was expertly explained. That was super clear. That was super. That's quite a deep technical point that we just touched on there. I do a lot of chromatography as an analytical chemist, so it's just like, okay, fair play, go on.
Have you had to do anything like
No, design my own columns? No, absolutely not. That is a real difficult thing to do, to be honest. It's tricky. Tough. So I can understand why you were so mad at your supervisor. I'd be like, what? Design a column? Come on. It's a bit much.
And then you had to design the speed, how tall the bed was going to be, how much number of beads and media you was going to pack into the column. And I'm thinking...
A lot of calculations.
Right, a lot of calculations.
It's good to know some of the different roles that are out there, though. I think just for the benefit of our listeners, it's always interesting to hear how many niches there are within a niche.
Yeah.
And how many different areas that you can, like you were saying earlier, at the time you didn't realize in chemistry there were so many jobs outside after you finish university. But you can go many, many different directions with something like that.
Yeah, true.
So so you said it's been 9 years now. Maybe in reflection, can you speak to either your 18 to 21-year-old self at, I think it's Aston University that you went to? Your 18, 21-year-old self, and just give yourself some advice. What would you be doing beyond just trying to get a degree, passing your exams and doing your dissertation?
Good question. A big part of my life growing up was playing netball. So all throughout my degree, I was part of the Aston Uni netball team, which for me, I felt like it was a really good way to disconnect from your studies. And I never missed a training, even when it got to crunch time in exam season. I just thought this is really my time to disconnect. When you're on the court with a ball, you can't really be thinking about this equation or whatever, because as soon as your mind goes, exactly. As soon as your mind goes, you could literally get a ball in your face. So you have to be present. So I'd always say if someone is going through uni, find those ways for you to disconnect. If you've got a hobby, don't let it slip, because sometimes when you step away from something, a course or an exam or revision notes, you have time to really clear your head And once you go back into it, it's like you've released all of this capacity that makes you absorb the information a lot better. And I think having those periods where I disconnected and I was quite disciplined with it, no matter the workload, really did help me stay focused in my studies. But another thing as well, I'd also say try and hang around with people that you wouldn't necessarily hang around with. Okay. So in Aston, there was quite a lot of home or local students. So it was quite multicultural with a lot of people from the Asian community. And then we had some international students as well. And I fostered a really close relationship with a Nigerian international student. And she really raised my inspirations because, as I said, I was planning on staying at Aston for the whole 5 years to do the integrated masters. And at the beginning of the 4th year, like when I came back from my placement, she was like, "Oh, Kai, this is my last year. I'm not hanging around. I'm going to Imperial to do my masters." And I was like, "What, you're just going to leave me?" And she was like, "Just try it." And I was thinking, like a few years before, when I was going through the whole UCAS system, I did not have the grades to even think of applying to Imperial. But I did. I applied to Imperial and UCL just off the basis that my friend wasn't going to be around for another year. And I got into both of them.
Wow. Amazing.
Wow.
And I think that it's really important to be around people that you can kind of gain inspiration from, and then they may introduce you to things that, or, you know, see a talent in yourself that you may not see. And yeah, I guess what my mum would say, "Oh, you're following fashion." But yeah, I was following fashion, and it got me into one of the best unis in the world to do my masters.
Absolutely.
So yeah, they're the two things that I would say to my 18 to 21-year-old self, for anyone that's going through uni. Make sure you find those hobbies or things that you love outside of your studying to help you disconnect and refocus, but then surround yourself around people that you wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, it shows the power of that diverse circle. And when you've got people coming from different backgrounds and different perspectives, things that you may not have been normal before become very ordinary.
Exactly.
And sometimes all you need is just that push from someone who you may not have expected. And as you said, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that takes us into a nice caveat into our next question. And so I think we've heard you speak about the importance of the managers that you've had previously who have believed in you, and as well as your friends who have given you that extra push. Are these always been people that look like you? I think some of them have been from diverse backgrounds. What has that dynamic been in kind of spurring you on to the next level?
Yeah, so I'd say the two managers that I had in my placement year, they were two pretty old white guys. Didn't come from remotely like the same background. I think they even grew up in like Dover or some sort of coast in England. So like our environments were very, very different. And then my friend, international Nigerian student, I think it's an interesting dynamic, because especially when people talk about mentoring, they say, should you get someone that's like similar experiences to you, or should you get someone that's different, that can give you a different perspective and things like that? At the end of the day, I think it really comes down to the individual, because if someone's willing to help you, they're going to be willing to help you no matter where you come from, what you look like, what your background is. But from my experience, I feel like that kind of comes far and few between. A lot of people gravitate to people that look like them, that's come from the same background, has experienced the same stuff. But yeah, like in my experience, my placement was in Ashford, Deep Kent. So, I mean, by default, there wasn't really good.
yeah. Slim pickings.
Exactly. But I just think it was really down to their characters, because all of the other managers were white men that didn't have that same motivation to really like train and mentor the people that were under them. Whereas, yeah, mine were completely different.
Yeah, and I think that shows the power of allyship, and sometimes it's just the little things that we do that go a long way, and kind of looking outside those, I think it's called homophily and unconscious and conscious bias, and it's the little things that go a long distance. So I think that's something that we encourage everyone to do. Help people that don't necessarily look like you in ways that you may not have perceived, and it can definitely go a long way, can't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we've both benefited a lot from having the support of managers and in some cases mentors who are just willing to give their time. Maybe we don't have anything in common, but it's really, really amazing when you do get those opportunities to connect with people like that. What about your experience though? So let's first ask, have you ever had the support of a mentor? And would you, because I think it can be quite inspiring seeing people who are successful in your field who come from a Black background. Can you maybe talk to your experience of that? And have you ever had a mentor?
I can't say that I've had a dedicated specific mentor where we've formed this formal relationship and once a week or once a month I've reached out to this person and we discuss stuff. I've never had that. I have, however, had people that I've come across, just through my professional career and going through BBSTEM and things like that, where I'm oh, you seem kind of cool. You seem like you're willing to help. Would you spare me 5 or 10 minutes or so? Not all of these people have been Black. Some of them, it's been a mix. It's been a mix, really. But I think it just really depends on your personal relationships that you have with people. I'm not I think mentoring is great, and I mean, we'll talk about this later, but we run our own mentoring scheme. But I think because my life is so busy, it's difficult for me to just pick one mentor and then just stick with that person, because there's so many different parts of my life that I need advice in. And it's not just one person that can help me with that. But I think it is really important to be able to have a network where you can reach out to people and just say, can you spare me 5 minutes? I'm not quite sure how I would approach this. What do you think? Am I approaching it the right way? Would you do it a little bit differently?
Some nuggets there. I think, you touched on the importance of considering different people who are at different stages in their life and career. You might ask someone for advice, for some business advice. You might ask someone for advice in achieving your goals. You might ask someone for technical advice. And I think at the core of that is being open to asking, which is maybe a barrier for a lot of people.
Yeah, and being open to learning, because I think a lot of times people, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but feel like they might get to a certain point in their career and they don't need to ask for help, or they've gone to the best uni and they don't need to ask for help. But I think that's a very kind of ignorant approach to have, because we're not all Einstein, and I'm sure Einstein didn't know everything either. So being of a teachable nature is really important. And there are people out there that like to share their knowledge and, instill knowledge in other people. But I think that will get you so far if you can say to yourself, and be honest with yourself and say, I don't know this. I don't actually know how to approach this. I'm going to go find someone to help me.
We don't have to do everything on our own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think one thing that you touched on that I really like as well is kind of the natural approach to and taking it away from the formal approach where you meet regularly and you're trying to check off these objectives. But actually, if you have what good mentoring looks like is usually a relationship where you get to know people, you know a bit more about them than maybe just our personal lives, and you're both helping each other grow in different ways. So I think that's really important. And I think you've touched a bit on BBSTEM. Maybe if we talk a bit about the origins of that, where that came from and where it is now, and it'll be great to hear from you.
Yeah, so I came up with literally just the idea of BBSTEM in 2017. And it really just came out of nowhere, to be honest. I remember I was walking somewhere in Lewisham with my mum, and she had bumped into one of her old school friends, and she was like, oh, this is my daughter. She's doing chemical engineering. She's doing her master's at Imperial. I was still studying at the time. And he was like, "Oh, do you know so-and-so's son?" She's like, "Yeah, I know so-and-so's son." It's always so-and-so, isn't it?
Oh my God.
And he was like, "Yeah, this guy did chemical engineering. He's like really killing it in the industry and he's traveling all around the world and doing all of this stuff and they should meet." So my mom was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, yeah, okay. Because when people say stuff like that, it never really materializes into anything.
Yeah.
So you just kind of go along with the conversation. But then a few months later, I think me and my family were in Jamaica on holiday and my aunt messaged me because this is like a proper school friend. Like everyone knew them. My mom had known this guy from she was like 11. So my aunt called me and was like, "Oh, some guy's asking for your number. Apparently you do the same thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like
It's actually happening.
This is actually happening." So I met up with this guy and after the meeting, I was just like so inspired by him. He was a black guy, mid-30s, grew up in South London. Our grandparents knew each other from Jamaica. And he actually studied chemistry as an undergrad, did chemical engineering for his master's, and then went into the oil and gas space, was pretty much killing it in the environment that he was in, came up with some software, got headhunted to like open up a branch of something somewhere. And I was just like,
who's this guy?
Yeah. I was like, this guy is so cool. And that, at the time, I was still kind of thinking, okay, if oil and gas might be like industry that I want to go into. But I just felt so inspired by him. And at that point, I didn't have any connections to like any professional chemical engineers, let alone a black one. And I was like, wow. So when we parted ways, he said, if there's anything you need, just reach out. Don't feel afraid to ask me any questions. No question is a stupid question. And I was just like, if my mum wasn't talking to this guy and happened to bring up the fact that I was studying chemical engineering, this connection would never have happened.
Big up mums.
Big up mums network. Yeah, listen to your mum. When your mum's trying to give you that connection, listen.
Exactly. But so after that, I was just like, I really want to create a network where young black people could reach out to other black British professionals and just have the same experience that I had. And then it kind of just took off from there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think we've seen a lot of organisations come or start around 2020 after what happened to George Floyd. So to hear that you had that foresight back in 2017, and I guess it must have been when you were quite early on in your career as well. Or were you
I was still studying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was still doing my
head of the curve.
Yeah, that is brave.
Before diversity was popular.
Yeah, exactly. Whilst people are figuring out what job they're going to do, you're thinking about setting up a whole industry.
That's a mindset
really
right
impressive.
there, man. That's a mindset.
Really impressive. And I think as we tap into that a bit more, from starting, as you said, you've been doing that for
6 years. We just had our 6th year anniversary.
Wow. Congratulations. I think especially as you hear so many businesses and organisations don't survive. Is it the first 2 years?
2 years,
so,
yeah.
Oh, really?
Burnout, burnout, the stress, you don't actually see the returns. So people just drop what they're doing, which is...
I was almost at that point at some point.
Yeah, but you made it through, and I think that's the important thing. Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, sure. So do you tend to collaborate with other businesses working in this sort of area? And like, because, you know, one of our key themes is like collaborate to elevate. And we find that there's a lot of people sort of just working in silos in some ways. And it can be really hard to get that outreach and to really make a difference. So can you maybe speak to the value of collaboration and to your experience of collaboration with your business?
Yeah, I completely agree. One of our core values is collaborate. So we had always gone into this idea with, you know, the more people that you collaborate, you can pull your resources and then have like a much wider reach. I think when we started, it was quite difficult because our core target audience is young black people. And at the time, there was no other organization in the DEI STEM space that was just targeting for black people. So our options were kind of limited. And I think where it was before the whole George Floyd thing, and the UK isn't as mature to have these conversations around race and stuff, it scared a few people. And like our target audience is in our name, like black. British. Black British.
It's like a dirty word or something.
Exactly.
Like
Black British professionals in STEM, like this is who we are, and this is who we're trying to support. So it was quite difficult. Our main collaborators have really been the organizations that we've partnered with. So the organizations that I would say that are bold enough to have their logo next to ours that says Black British, like, I really do rate them. But we've really been using those kind of organizations to provide the opportunities that we can for our community.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's really, really impressive. And I think you've touched on the lack of representation of black people in STEM. I guess you've had almost a double challenge from the fact that you're black, but you're also a woman as well. So it's almost intensifies those challenges. What has it been being one of few in the room, both in your professional career and also with BBSTEM, and how have you overcome those challenges as well?
So I'll talk about my professional career first. So when I came out of uni, I worked for a company called Mace. Now they're a construction company. So it was just me.
I was going to say, like, were there any other women? Literally, I'd be shocked.
There was hardly any other woman. I don't think there were that many women in my team. But then it's a company where you tender for projects. So the few women that are there are spread across multiple projects. So most of the women that are on their projects with their teams are just it's just them. Yeah. So that was quite rough because that was like a proper old boys club. I remember I didn't stay there for long, but that was not because of me being black. It was more for like my professional goals. Yeah, it like staying there didn't really align with where I wanted to be professionally. But I remember being in a project, and there was about 15 of us in a room, and it was a project kickoff, and everyone had to go around the table to like introduce themselves. So it was people from my company, and then we had like mechanical people, electrical people, project managers, this, that, and the other. And they'd gone around the whole table and like skipped me.
Wow.
Wow.
Like completely skipped me.
Made my blood boil.
And I was just like, do I say something or not? And I didn't say anything because I just felt like, number one, I felt ashamed. Like clearly the people in my company don't value me for me to have a 5-second introduction. Yeah. And like no one else has mentioned it, so I don't want to cause a fuss. So I just kept quiet.
And there's the other side where if you do react, then they jump on the angry black woman bandwagon. And that's also in the back of your mind as well. So that must have been a really difficult situation to be in. And what happened after that?
I just left it. And then for the remainder of that project, I didn't say anything.
Wow.
So that's been like quite a difficult experience. But what I'd say that I lacked confidence a bit there. My next role was at AstraZeneca. That was a little bit different because it was more life science pharma based, where there was a lot more women. I'd say it's probably about 50-50 women. Yeah. Not as many black women, but definitely had the female representation. Still had some issues there, but I feel like I started to do some internal work and really started to build up my confidence. So
how did you do that? What does it take?
I think it's really putting yourself out there. Really putting yourself out there. And I really have BBSTEM to thank as well, because before that, I was always the person that was like the last person to walk in the room. I'd never really put my hand up. If I had a question, I'd wait till the class finished or something and then go to the lecturer. But leading this organization has kind of forced me to put myself out there, and having to speak to certain people in positions of power or people inviting me to speak in different places, then that has definitely like helped me build up my confidence and be comfortable in who I am. And now I take that with me in like the role that I'm in now, I guess my 9 to 5, that I'm comfortable and confident in who I am and what I can bring to the table. And if I do see a little bit of injustice, address it.
Ready to step on it. I love that. I love that.
I think you only want to be walked over like that, and like, you know, a couple of times in your life, because it's demoralizing and it's leave you feeling quite ashamed. So sorry I had to go through that experience, and I mean, it gave you some power. So lessons are a blessing, right?
Yeah,
one way or another. So let's stick with BBSTEM again, because I think this has been quite an important project to embark on, and it's really just really inspiring, really quite amazing. Where do you feel like you've had the most amount of impact in terms of where you're directing your energies? So would it be like more so with universities, or more so in working with corporates, or is it like maybe a little bit of both?
I would say it's a little bit of both. In terms of impact, it's probably best to like kind of group it into, because our main, I guess, beneficiaries of our work are Black people, really. So there's obviously like the primary school, secondary school, universities, and then professionals. So our major impact has really been like in the university student space, and a little bit in the professional space. In terms of excelling professionals, we've pulled professionals in to support our university students, but there's still some more work that we can do with like the professional side of things. And that's purely because like we're not a huge organization. We don't have endless amounts of money, and we don't have the right resources to be able to tap into like the younger years. That's always been an aspiration of mine, but I've always tried to be very careful with the programs and the offerings that we do deliver. I want to make sure that we're in the right space so that we can deliver it effectively. Because I didn't want to be one of those organizations that's doing this and doing that, that's doing this and doing that. And then there's like, we're not actually making any impact. So we kind of had the approach where let's just get really good at delivering what we know we can deliver well. And then once that's kind of like moving along itself, then see if we can start to build up the resources to impact the younger generation. Because everyone knows, like, by the time you get to uni, like, your mind's set. But a key thing is really inspiring the younger generation that science is cool. You don't have to be, like, super, super smart to want to embark on it. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's not biting off more than you can chew, because as you said, this is not just after your 9 to 5, it's almost the 5 to 9, as it were. And with the limited time, you've got to have that laser focus to make sure you're giving that impact. And I think one of the things that we've also discussed is there's probably in the last couple of years been a rise in quite a few of these similar organizations where people get into industry, they realize the challenges, and they think, okay, what can we do? Maybe individual or as a small group of people. What advice, or what's your experience been with funding and sponsorship and in some of these programs that you've run, and what have been the lessons you've learned in putting in applications as well?
And I guess like as part of that, like, what advice would you give to small businesses who are trying to get involved in this work in terms of trying to make it something that is rewarding in terms of the time that they give, whether that's financially, hopefully it's financially. That's.
I think it really depends on the actual individual, the project, the company, and what their aims are. So when I started it, my aim, I had no idea where it was going to go. Like, I literally just started BBSTEM because I was inspired by this guy and I wanted to create this network where other young people could find Black people doing science and engineering. So I didn't have like some big business plan. I had no idea where to get funding. I had no idea where I was going to finance it. I literally just started it because of it being a passion, and I felt like it was the right thing to do. But kind of similar to what you said, like I got to a point where I was like biting off more than I can chew, and it was really, really overwhelming. But because I was super passionate about it and I wanted it to last, I said this needs to be financed one way or another for it to last. And I had like plugged a lot of my own money into it in like the first few years because I wanted to present as a professional organization. So I'd like put money into the website, put money into just really giving it a professional feel, set it up as its actual entity with Companies House and things like that. And I wanted to make sure that BBSTEM was a framework where people trusted us because we have that professional feel and we're accountable to Companies House.
Exactly. Yeah. We're official. We're legit.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was like really, really important for me. When I was speaking to people that were operating in a similar space, they relied heavily on funding, from like the National Lottery and all of these other places that give grants or going out to trusts and stuff like that. And I'd say for the first 2.5, 3 years, that's what we were like trying to rely on. So it was just application after application after application after application, and it was rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. And one rejection that really did kind of hurt me at the time was from the National Lottery, and I'll say it. It was from the National Lottery. And they said, there's so many people that's doing stuff like this. Why don't you just like do what they're doing? And I was like, well, actually, we are the only organization that is trying to make STEM equitable for Black British people, not ethnic minorities, for Black British people. We're the only one. So that is my USP. And this is why it's really, really important. I took that one quite personally. There's others that I've taken quite personally now that I'm thinking of that. Now that I'm thinking of it, but I realised quite quickly that I can't rely on external funding, and that I need to come up with my own revenue streams for it to last. And it was quite difficult at the beginning, like when companies were saying, let's do stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, this is how much it's going to cost. They're like, well, you're a not-for-profit. Like, well, what do you need the money for? Well, okay, it is a not-for-profit, but we need funds so that we can cover the overhead, so that at least the bare bones can run, so that we can deliver our programs for free to the community.
Yeah, it's those operating costs, isn't it?
Exactly.
And to deliver quality, you can't do that with free. As you said, websites need to be built, takes time to build slides, you may have to get contractors in.
Exactly.
And, it all comes together.
Exactly. But I had to be confident in asking as well, because at first I was thinking, well, how do I ask for this? I've never operated in this space. And then I had to go out to mentors or people that's done it before. And I actually had a lady who, she was from the States. She was doing a stint over in Cambridge with her husband, and she worked at C-suite level in the States to make sure that their boards were diverse and things like that. So she pretty much like came on board as like a bit of a governor type thing, and reviewed all of the work that we were doing and said, if people are approaching you for sponsorship, this is how you need to go back to them with like one document, and the document needs to say who you are, what you're doing, what the value exchange is, and how much that you need from them. And it needs to be on one page, because people that are the decision makers don't have time to be reading booklets. And that really, really changed up the game. So when we collaborate with people, we do ask for a sponsorship. So, because that allows for our programs to be free for our community. There's already enough barriers for young Black people. And I'm not saying that Black people can't afford whatever, but there's other challenges which make these programs like not as accessible. And for whatever reason, I didn't want finances to be like an excuse for someone to not come to any of our events. So now like that's been really, really the driver of like us being able to be self-financed, basically.
It's an amazing journey. And I think, just reflecting on the fact that you've got to 6 years, it seems that you've really been able to tap into that mentorship, also that networking, and improve your internal processes. And I like that thing about the one pager, because sometimes we get so much in the detail and you end up with a 10-page deck or a 10-page document when actually they're not reading past the first page.
Exactly.
And that is where all the key information needs to be.
It's like a CV, isn't it, really? Like, don't mess around, like, going too far into the depth. Like, give people what they want to hear. And, power of communication, I think. I want to just maybe touch on confidence, just because we mentioned it quite a lot of times, there was times when you didn't have confidence, and then maybe you were taken advantage of in those situations. You found your confidence, approaching businesses to ask for money, you have to be a confident person. Can you maybe give, like, at least one, but let's say two, practical tips that were maybe how you found your confidence?
Oh,
tough, right?
That is tough.
That's difficult questions.
That is tough. Honestly, I really feel like one of them is having my mum behind me.
Oh, I love that.
Like, I'm a proper mummy's child. I run to her with everything, cry to her with everything, laugh to her with everything. She is my co-D.
Love that. Love that. Big up mumsy.
She always reminds me what I'm capable of, because it's so easy to lose yourself and feel like, I'm not going to do this, and what if I might not say the right thing? And I even thought that when I was coming here, to be honest. I was like, I've never done a podcast before. Like, what exactly am I going to say? But I think it is so, so important to have someone in your corner that sees your gems and sees your potential more than you. And I can hand on my heart say that my mum has really seen all of it and pushed me to go to places and do things that I don't necessarily want to do because I'm shy or I'm not sure how I might come across. And she's always been like, Kai, just go for it, because you're more than capable. You literally have it in you to go and do it. So whatever your mind is telling you, just ignore it. And I don't know how practical that is. And I think it is probably a privilege to have someone in my corner, and especially that person being my mum, to be able to do that. But whether it's your friends, sometimes there are friends that you have for different things. Like, it's important to have a friend that, can really tell you how it is. But having that one person that you can really, really trust and pushes you to next levels, that was the key for me. And I think that would probably be the key for a lot of people.
Yeah, deep. I think that's really important. Like, a lot of the students that we speak to, who maybe we're involved in mentoring programs with, it's one of the key things that they come to us with. We're not really confident, we're a bit shy, we're a bit quiet, we don't know how to speak up.
Yeah.
Listen to that friend or that parent or that one. It only really needs to be one person. You're right. And like, I'd hope most people have at least that one person. But
even onto that as well, because I do have a lot of young people, same as well, that say, I don't know where to start. And I think it's important to remind young people that even though there are, professionals or people that's a few steps ahead in your journey, they're all people at the end of the day. And when I started, that was another thing that probably helped me. When I took the label away from people like, oh, the CEO of this or the managing director of this or whatever, they're people at the end of the day. And I don't necessarily believe in hierarchy. I believe that people are in different positions because they've acquired different knowledge to be there. But I don't look at you as if you're more important than me or I'm less important because you might just be in a different position. That's literally it. And when you start to strip those titles away from an individual, you see them as a person, and it's easier to just approach a person than a CEO.
That is an amazing gem, and I think that is, I've overwhelmed myself numerous times going into meetings thinking, oh my goodness, this person's a CEO and they've done this, that and the other. And when you just start off with a normal question like, oh, how's your day been? Or what did you get up to this weekend? And you find out, oh, actually, they had car trouble, or they went out with their family, or they went for dinner, or they had... just human beings like us. And
also, one day they weren't a CEO.
Exactly.
You know, like they had to become a CEO, and then they were like, "Oh crap, I'm the CEO. I've got to do
they're
everything."
Probably thinking, I don't know what I'm
blagging
doing
it.
here.
Yeah, blagging it. Everyone's kind of blagging it a bit.
Yeah, that is definitely another practical piece of advice I would give to a young person. Strip the title away and look at them as Bob.
Yeah,
love that.
I
love that. Big up, Bob.
I think you've touched on mentoring schemes, and I think we've been involved in quite a few mentoring schemes as well. From the Royal Society of Chemistry, Black Pharma, Kingston University, Greenwich University.
Yeah,
quite a few.
Like mentoring.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen the good and bad sides of mentoring. But what makes yours different, or what have you seen to be the upside and the top tier of mentoring, and where it's really best applied?
Yeah, so BBSTEM has its own mentoring program. We called it Bridge, and they're 6-month cohorts. Now, I wanted to do this mentoring scheme from 2018, and I remember saying it when we had our launch event at Microsoft. I said that this is what I want to do, and I had every intention of launching it in 2018. But there was someone from the Academy of Medical Sciences. I can't remember if they were in the room or if they had dialed into the live stream, but they contacted me after and was like, "Oh, I heard you want to start your own mentoring program. We have a program, like a day of training about how to build an effective mentoring scheme." So she was like, "Come down." So I went, and I just realized I didn't have the time or resources or anything to be able to launch this scheme like appropriately and for it to have the right impact. So that was 2018. 2020, I think it was halfway through 2020, I was speaking to the people at the Academy of Medical Sciences. I was having a bit of a moan, to be honest. I love a moan. And I was like, I can't believe now I still haven't launched this mentoring scheme. Like, I just feel really disappointed and I really want to be able to do it. And they were like, "We'll help you." Wow. So I was like, oh, okay, like I've got an extra pair of hands. But in the background, I was like pulling material together and like writing guides and stuff. I guess I just didn't have the confidence to like just really pull the plug on it. But when I sent all of the material I had over to them, they were like, "Oh my gosh, like this is really, really great." So that was 2020, we did our pilot launch. We've just gone into our 7th cohort. Wow. And it is our most popular scheme. And I think the thing that makes probably our one quite successful, because we get our professional members, we get them all the time. That's like, "Oh, can I join another scheme? Can I join another scheme?" Like they love it, yeah. And that's it. It was really important for the professionals to get something out of it as well. And that's what we say when we do training, because we have a half an hour training for mentors and half an hour training for mentees. We say to the mentors, "Look, like the environment that the university students are going through now is completely different to how it was when you were. So learn something from each other." Yeah. But even a step before that, I think one thing that makes our scheme quite impactful is that we really take heed of what the students want and what their aspirations are. Because it's so easy to just pick up someone that's studying biology at uni and pair them with someone that studied biology as a professional, but like there may not be any synergies, that there's probably nothing that, well, not probably, but there may not be something that they can learn from each other. So every time we start a cohort, we say to the students, what is it that, what are your aspirations? What are you trying to get out of this scheme? What is it that you want to learn? They tell us, and then we literally go through our entire professional list, because we know what our professionals are doing, and we handpick them, basically.
No algorithms.
Yeah, no algorithms.
Beautiful.
Completely handpick them and say, this is going to be the best pairing based off of what the students expressed and what the professional is doing. And then we have a mentor and program coordinator. So if the pairs doesn't match, if they don't click, if they don't get on, then you don't have to be stuck with them.
That's great. That's great.
For the next 6 months. So we have that kind of level of care when we're going through our mentoring schemes, and I think that's really important.
I think, the work that you're doing with BBSTEM is amazing, and really, really have loved hearing about it. So let's just briefly jump back to your personal life before we start moving towards the end. So your newest role, I understand, is a bit of a move away from, let's say, more traditional science-based background, and you now work as sort of more like in a business consulting role. Can you speak maybe as to what led you to that transition, and and how do you find it? How's it been?
Okay, yeah. So I'll probably start from what I was doing at AstraZeneca. So I was a fill and finish process engineer. So basically, my role was half in the lab, half in the manufacturing environment. So my role was to design the fill and finish part of the process, which is taking the drug, filtering it a bit more and mixing it and doing all of this stuff, and then putting it in the vial, syringe, or the cartridge, and then designing the transportation step so that by the time it gets to the patient, it doesn't degrade. So it was a lot of lab scale studies to understand the sensitivities of the drug, and then go into the manufacturing environment and doing larger scale practice runs, and then analyzing the data and all of this stuff. And
it's like 8 different jobs in there.
Basically, yeah. And then writing up the regulatory report to submit to
Take
the
heed,
FDA
everyone.
or whoever. So I did actually really enjoy doing that. I was doing that for 2.5 years. The only thing I started to get a little bit bored, if I'm honest. And I'd say that's because when you're that late in drug development, there isn't really that much room for scientific creativity. You just have to do what you know works and what the regulators are going to accept, in a way that the drug's not going to be harmful to the patient. So once you've designed a few of these processes, they're the same. The only thing that may change is the mixing speed or how fast you filter it just based off of the sensitivities of the drug, but the process is the same. So I was just like, okay, what next? And I started to kind of think about my impact and what I'm doing in the lab and how that impacts what I wasn't doing in the lab. So the finance side of things. How do we decide if we've got a drug and we decide to manufacture it internally or subcontract it out to another organization to make, or if we just decide to sell the asset? How do we decide if we buy another asset from a smaller company or just buy the whole company? Or how do we go to market? How do we decide how much insurers pay in the States and things like that? So I really started to think about what I was doing in the lab and what the whole of the pharma world looked like outside of the lab. Bigger picture. Yeah, exactly. So I think it was end of 2019, I'd put down my 5-year goals because they make you do that at work.
Yeah.
And I really had no idea where I wanted to go, but I just said that I wanted to be in a position where I could support strategic or investment decisions based off of my scientific background. So I left it very, very open. And then I came across the company that I work for now, and they had just started a new healthcare and life sciences team. And it was pretty much that. So I was like, okay, this seems interesting. Yeah, this seems pretty interesting. And then that's pretty much where I am now and where I've been for the last 3 years. So I don't wear a white lab coat at all. I'm not in the lab. And I do miss the science, but I kind of got what I've asked for. So a lot of the clients that we work with are private equity clients that either want to buy or sell a company. Because of my background, they'll ask me to lead the operational due diligence side of it. So if they've got pharma companies, they'll ask me to go to these sites, wherever they are in the world, and do an assessment basically rate their processes, their maturity in certain areas. If they're not operating well, then come up with a value creation plan of how they can either improve their operations or reduce costs and things like that. And then basically give advice to the PE firms and say, this is the state of the company. If you change ABC, you could get XYZ returns. So that is like predominantly what I do. So I am using my scientific background to inform investment decisions. And it's been a really, really interesting journey. I'm going to say that it wasn't what I expected at all, because it's a management consulting firm. Yeah. So consulting, like, you think of, what do they call them? The big four. So McKinsey, BCG, Bain, all of that stuff. Like, there's a certain level of skills that they expect you to come with. And they have this language called technical skills. So I'm thinking technical skills is like how I can design the process for a drug or all of this stuff. But their technical skills is financial modeling, how to build a compelling PowerPoint presentation, how to read a profit and loss, look at all of these financial statements and come out with red flags. And I didn't have any of that. Like nothing.
Heavy.
At all.
Heavy.
So that's been a huge, huge learning curve. And to be honest, it was pretty like hard to learn this whole package of skills, because there's me thinking, I'm coming in, you know I'm a chemical engineer. I didn't study accounting. There's a lot of people that's CPA accredited or whatever they call it. And I've if you want me to model monoclonal antibody, then I can do that with my eyes closed, let alone model a financial statement. So it was really, really hard to acquire all of these skills. But I can say that I'm there now, so I can build a financial model. Can't quite do a 13-week cash flow, still working on it. But I can look at different departments' finances and identify red flags and say, oh, you're losing cash here, here, here. And then I can, once I'm doing these assessments of these sites, I can say, if you change ABC in the plant, you can get XYZ returns or whatever their ambition is. So, it's been a journey. I'm still on it. But I think being able to be in different companies, because it's very project based, but being in different companies, working with different people, bouncing around the world, understanding different cultures, a lot of those teachings has allowed me to be a better leader for BBSTEM. So I'm not going to knock it.
That's amazing. And I think, especially when you start your career and you imagine the stereotypical chemist and you think of them in the white lab coat and probably got some sellotape between their glasses. Yeah. Well, actually, there's so many more opportunities out there. And especially when you think outside the lab as well, you can take those skills that you've learned in the lab and apply them to other contexts. And I think that segues into my next question. I believe it was a couple of years ago you were awarded with your Doctors of Science from Aston University.
That's Kayisha Payne.
Yeah.
That's right. Put some respect on the name, right? Can you tell us a bit about that journey, how it came about and what it was for? And do you still make sure people call you Dr. Kayisha now?
I think what he's asking is, how do we get our honorary doctorate? Right. What do we got to do? What do we got to do?
So it actually came as a complete surprise. Where was I? I think I was on a project bouncing around Italy and Germany, and I was doing that back to back for weeks. I didn't even have time to look at my post. And I think when the project was over, I had a whole leap of letters to go through. And then I saw this letter. I just started crying. I just started crying because it literally came out of nowhere. I didn't put myself up for it. I had no idea what the criteria was to even put yourself up for it. But I guess they had been watching what I was doing from the sidelines and felt like I was worthy enough to be awarded this honorary doctorate for diversity in STEM. So it's pretty much all of the work that I was doing with BBSTEM. I do have to say, Aston, they were and they are quite supportive of what we do. So they were one of the first members to be part of our university alliance. they promote all of our stuff, all of our events, so that their Black students can have access to what we're doing. So they've been very supportive. But I don't know who nominated me, where it came from. But it was a really, really humbling experience because it wasn't anything that I was looking for or expected. And I guess I didn't even realize that they would give stuff like that to people. So yeah, it pretty much just came out of the blue, and I was just doing what I was doing, like doing my little piece with BBSTEM.
Not so little piece, not so little.
Serious
I think it
Put some respect
shows
on your name, yeah.
the amazing work you've done over the last 6 years. And I think even outside BBSTEM, without anything you've done in BBSTEM, the work that you do, showing up every day, that addresses a lot of the representation challenges that we see. And there'll be younger engineers that will see you and see what you've done and think, wow, actually, I can do that as well. So I think it's very well deserved. And yeah,
we got to your graduation again as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they said that I can go and sit on that stage any year that I want.
Love it.
Not sure that I have the time, but it's nice.
We need to hit up Kingston.
That's right, yeah.
And no, I don't make everyone call me Dr. Payne.
No.
Maybe if there's someone that's trying to be like, I haven't quite come across a person that's not like, that's kind of put me down or anything, but I feel like I might.
Yeah.
Just I'm human, innit?
Yeah.
I'd make my parents call me. Dr. Saad. Yeah.
My dad loves it though. He really, really loves the whole Dr. Payne. And I remember quite a few years ago, my late granddad, he's passed now. He always wanted me to be a Dr. Payne.
Oh, wow.
Always wanted me to be a Dr. Payne. And obviously he's not here now to see it. But I think
he's watching. He's watching. Yeah. That's amazing. And I think even going back that further generation, they put all these hopes and aspirations in us. And sometimes you don't even know how you're going to achieve it. So the fact that you didn't look for it, you didn't ask for it, but it came, I think that's...
His blessings found
amazing.
you, right?
Yeah.
So I'm quite conscious of time.
Yeah.
I just want to say this has been like, first of all, like a complete masterclass in the different types of roles that are available in science and engineering. Like your career has been a really, really interesting journey from, more traditional pharmaceutical company to like a construction company to like business consulting. It's such a wide range and really goes to show like what you can do with, for example, a chemical engineering degree. So it's also a real testament to the hard work and dedication that you put in. So thank you so much for sharing this time with us. Any last questions that you maybe want to ask before we wrap up?
I think what is the biggest achievement that you reflect on from the start of your career? What do you look back on and think, yeah, that was amazing?
Oh gosh, there isn't one. There isn't one. I'll be very quick.
Yeah. Top 3?
I think
Top
the
5?
first one is when I got invited to Parliament to advise on policy changes about how to make STEM education more accessible.
Wow.
Big.
That's one. My honorary doctorate, that's like massive. Another one was when we got invited to basically like represent Britain in Italy. So every year they have this thing called Pontignano Conference. And we were invited to basically discuss how Italy and the UK could like foster better relationships for each other. And then I'd say the last one is outside of BBSTEM, but I started working with the Met Police because I was moaning about how much they stop and search young Black people. So I was really moaning, and I was able to use my connections through the private school to get hold of Cressida Dick and basically moan and say that I wasn't happy with it. So for a while I was working with them. I need to reach out to them now that their leadership's changed. But I say they're the main ones that I'm really, really proud of.
That's impressive. Amazing.
So we're sitting with the boss right now.
That's right.
No doubt. Okay. Very quick fire round. I think we're only going to be able to do half of these.
No problem.
All right. Let's actually try and make it a quick actual quick
one
fire round.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Favorite food?
Oxtail rice and peas.
Jeez. fancy some of that now.
Yeah,
right. Favorite music, whether it's genre, artist, song, what gets you
Has
going?
to be dancehall.
Yes. My wife is listening right now, like, hey.
Dancehall any day, all day.
We're going out to a dancehall night tonight, actually.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh,
big
jealous.
up. Favorite quote, or maybe an expression, or like a verse from a track?
Oh gosh, no, that's next. That's not, I was going to take too long.
Yeah, that's all right.
Too long to think of one.
Favorite hobby or pastime or activity?
Oh, now it's skipping. Used to be
Yeah.
netball, but I don't have time for that. But skipping.
Can you get them
rope.
double skips in?
Not yet.
Okay, yeah.
I might try that tomorrow.
Yeah. Confidence, right? Any celebrities or icons or heroes that you can like relate to?
No.
Dream location, holiday, favorite. If you could be anywhere in the world, where would you be?
Probably Bali. My boyfriend took me for my 30th birthday in December, and that's like my favorite place now. So yeah, Bali, Indonesia, get me out there.
Least favorite STEM subject?
Well, I'm going to go with physics. Not because it was the least one. I enjoyed it, but I just wasn't that good at it.
It's
hard. Biggest pet peeve or what really grinds your gears?
Dirty plates in the sink.
Uh-oh, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, don't come to my house. Biggest like fear or phobia?
Public speaking.
Wow, and you're killing it now.
Yo, take note, everyone. This is it. I think that is, if there's anything you're taking from this, if you have a fear of public speaking, get up and go speak.
Exactly.
And finally, what animal best represents you or your favorite animal?
So I actually asked my boyfriend this yesterday because I was really struggling, and he said elephant.
I
Because
like that.
I don't forget anything.
I was going to say he'd
I
never
don't forget
forget
anything.
Wow.
So I think, we'll go with that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honor. I really enjoyed the conversation as well. There's been so many gems that you've shared with us. And one thing we're big on is giving people their flowers whilst they're still here. So we've got you a special gift here.
Actual flowers.
Yeah, that's
Got people with flowers, man.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I love orchids.
Oh, great. And then we've also got you a gift from our sponsor.
Oh, I love a goodie. Thank you.
So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
No problem at all.
And let's collaborate in the future sometime,
yes.
Do you want to wrap us up, Andy?
Yeah, man. So big up to everyone who's been listening. We are Vanta STEM, and we've been listening to the lovely Dr. Kayisha Payne. See you again in 2 weeks for the next episode.
That's right.